Good evening, Whalawhatu, and welcome to tonight's bulletin of BCN News. Leading the news tonight, a statement from the Office of the Premier states that the Niue Cabinet has endorsed the arrangement to facilitate quarantine-free travel between Niue and New Zealand. This document will also be presented to the New Zealand government for their endorsement. Premier Tagilangi confirmed that discussions between the two governments are ongoing for quarantine-free travel. The government's COVID-19 committee are continuing to dialogue with their New Zealand counterparts to ensure that both sides meet all the protocols in the agreement to pave out the way for quarantine-free travel. According to the statement, no time frame is set for quarantine-free travel yet, that it will only commence when Niue and New Zealand health officials have mutually determined that the rate of COVID-19 transmission and associated public health risk is acceptably low in both countries. Earlier this month, the Premier told BCN News that quarantine-free travel is not going to happen this year, but very likely next year. Quarantine-free travel to Niue will continue to follow all the stringent protocols currently in place with the health and border agencies in the two countries, according to the statement. As the world anxiously await the final go-ahead of a vaccine for COVID-19, Niue has been assured that New Zealand will be purchasing enough doses of the vaccine to cover 50% of the population.
Our agreement under COVAX with the Government of New Zealand is that whatever they enter into agreement by virtue of being a realm country, we also benefit. So they've signed up an agreement under the COVAX facility for 50% of the population. So we will also be receiving 50% of the vaccines for our population. To be able to cover the other 50%, we would also need to enter into other arrangements. And again, we are relying on the Government of New Zealand and Ministry of Health there to also provide that other 50% for us.
In early October, BCN News spoke to Dr. Helen Patosis-Harris, a specialist in vaccinology at the University of Auckland, about the vaccines being tested and when they would likely be available.
There's a few vaccines that are in what we call very late phase trials. So those are the really big trials that are comparing the vaccine with a placebo or sort of a dummy injection. And if those trials go well, the results are expected at the end of the year at the earliest. And if the results look good and the vaccine is protective and is shown to be quite safe, then there may be vaccines rolling out shortly afterwards. But it doesn't mean we're going to have access to them straight away. That might take some time because, of course, there's a whole world's population waiting for vaccines. So it will probably take a few months after that to start seeing the first doses coming through.
Meanwhile, on radio last week, Gayleen Tasmania, the Director General of the Ministry of Social Services, cautions the public's expectations on the vaccine.
What we do know of the vaccine, it is not 100% effective in the sense that you won't get COVID. It works by minimizing or lessens the severity of COVID. So it doesn't mean that you won't ever get it, it just means it won't be as severe.
The government's COVID committee says that the vaccine, when it does arrive in Niue, will be rolled out firstly for the frontline staff, those who will be dealing directly with incoming passengers.
All the work that we've been doing has been about readiness for a case, because we never promised it would never get here. And I think that's something that people need to remember. We cannot guarantee that COVID would never get to Niue, and we never did. From the beginning, we said that if it did, that we have the ability to contain it and eliminate it.
The Director of Education, Mrs. Berfa Tongahai, has confirmed that the Niue High School PTA or school committee is inactive. Mrs. Tongahai was responding to further questions from BCN News regarding their press statement last week. BCN News understands that the PTA committee has been inactive for almost 10 years and is a key reason parents have resorted to posting their frustrations on social media. The concerns raised recently over the alleged bullying of a 13-year-old student by a teacher was denied by the Director of Education. She told BCN News in an email that the student was asked to go to the principal's office. What the student does after they leave the classroom and not going to see the principal is beyond the school's control. The role of the PTA or the school committee is traditionally the way parents and the community raise their concerns, and the PTA acts as the conduit between the community and the school on matters relating to the school and student welfare. Yesterday, the principal of Niue High School, Charles Ioane, sent out a school newsletter which included the school's concerns at the continuing problem of truancy, that the school is very concerned some of the students have not been attending school regularly since the beginning of the term. Concerns over the absence of a PTA is attributed to the increasing issues facing the school and student welfare. Furthermore, the progress of the review of the Education Act has stalled yet again, an exercise that has taken more than 10 years and still not completed, despite the current minister's wishes for this review to be completed by the end of this year. After the completion of an appeals process, the Public Service Commission has confirmed the appointment of Mrs. Maureen Melekitama to the position of the Internal Auditor of the Government, working within the Department of Finance and Planning. According to a press statement from the Commission this morning, that at the closing of the appeals process on the 17th of November, there were no valid appeals received. Critics of the decision of the Public Service Commission say that this was an exercise in futility, as the appeals process was open only to permanent employees of the public service. So anyone else not a permanent public servant could not appeal according to the public service regulations. The progress with the Manawatu Cable, which has been pushed back a few times for various reasons and was supposed to come online this month, is now postponed again until the end of January next year.
The Manawatu Cable is actually ready for service, and at the moment what's holding it up is the legal side of it, the contract work. So at the moment both parties, it's with their legal lawyers, so we can't do anything until that contract is actually signed, sealed and delivered by them. So that'll be the Cooks and also the Niue government.
Telecom Niue says that the delays are to sort out these legal issues between Niue and the Cook Islands, and assures the public that there will be no increase to the cost to customers.
The service will be so much faster. You won't have any of the buffering. We're increasing the speed from 100 to 1,000 megabytes per second. So it's a big increase in speed.
The smallest village on the island, Namokulu, held two big events back-to-back over the weekend. Some of the best fishing this year at their Marine Day, and of course another successful show day for Namokulu. On Friday, fishermen and women and children, mostly from other villages, took part in the Namokulu Marine Day. Organisers said that a total of 34 canoe fishermen took part and hauled in over 100 kilos of fish on the day. The heaviest catch was a wahoo caught by Dimitri Viliamo of Alofi South, weighing in at 38.6 kilos. Second heaviest fish is another wahoo caught by Sione Poka or Sione Tama from Tuapa, weighing in at just under 21 kilos. And the third heaviest fish was caught by Alofi North fisherman Tutuli Haka with his 15.4 kilo albacore tuna. The winner of the reef fishing went to Mr. Tamuta Utalo, followed in second place by young Siki Tongia, and third place 7-year-old Kansei Pihingia Talangi. Susana Sione Tuatu took out the reef cleaning competition with a great collection of shells and ungako. On Saturday, the small village green was surrounded by stalls selling food, drinks, desserts and many more. Women's crafts and the crops grown especially for the day displayed the dedication of the people of Namokulu to putting on another successful show day. While the resident population of Namokulu may be small, the annual village show day is supported by many of its families and friends who live in other villages. The village elder and veteran member of parliament, 86-year-old Jack Willie Lipitoa, told the story of how the name Namokulu came to be when the village broke away from the main village of Tuapa. He said that Namu was the name of the past of the village at the time, and the word Kulu is the name of the bird, the Polynesian dove, the Kulukulu. The village then became Namokulu. The show day was officially opened by the Minister of Social Services, Honourable Sauni Tongatule, who commended the village for their show day, but also for being the tidiest village in Niue. The minister says that every time he visits or drives past the village of Namokulu, the grounds are always well kept. The High Commissioner of New Zealand, Helen Tana, commended the government officials and frontline staff for continuing to keep Niue COVID-free. Susan Allen, the High Commissioner for Australia, commended the people of Niue that despite the impacts of COVID-19, the island and her people are still able to put on the best show days, one after another. And finally, the celebrations of the FCW held last Friday seem to have confounded those who were invited, including the media. But we do love our celebrations, and the ladies wearing their beautiful muumuu and fofos gathered at the Millennium Hall to do just that, celebrate last Friday. The president of the FCW, Reverend Diamond Toevihi, encouraged the women to embrace new members into the organization. She thanked all the members and invited guests who were there to celebrate with them. The organizers also recognized the elders of the group for their long service to the organization. Mrs. Nasa Vakanofisi from Avasele FCW said that she first became a member of the FCW in 1961, 2 years after getting married. She said that most of the work they did back in those days are still the same as what they're doing now. They raise funds to ensure the organization can meet the needs of the women and families in their village, especially when the women face hardships such as an illness. Then the FCW will be there to help. The president of the National Council of Women, Mrs. Nungimoka Pomale, presented gifts to these women to mark the day of celebration. And that's our bulletin of BCN News for tonight. Join us again for our bulletin in Wangahau tomorrow. Until then, Marinipo, Nonofua.